This is the text-to-speech audio version of The Observer by Dark Philosopher. To read the full article, including analysis of trends we're observing and other content, check us out on Substack at darkphilosopher.substack.com or anywhere podcasts are broadcast. Article title: Science by Consensus. Article subtitle: The Broke Homeless Physicist You've Never Heard of. I want to tell you a story about a man, a Hispanic man, a great man. This man was not famous. He was not rich. He was homeless, living in a van wherever he could park it. This man would take what little money he had and buy old textbooks and study them for entertainment. His specialty was physics. He was a physicist, a great physicist. He was a teacher, a great teacher. He was a physicist without a degree in physics, as if a degree makes one a physicist as the study precedes the education. I don't know what happened to that man. All I know is his ideas challenged the consensus in science in ways and means that would have shaken the very core of physics itself. The consensus in science won by default. Before he was erased, he held forums and discussed his ideas. He would invite anyone who wanted to come, which was rarely a scientist. He would explain the fundamentals of physics and science to people who haven't seen a textbook on the topic in a generation or more. Then, he would explain much more. He made such an impact that he was even invited to consensus forums to hobnob with those scientist types in their pretty dress suits and bow ties. He would attend those events, bringing his textbooks with him. He would open up the textbooks that were taught to university students, and he would say, "Is this what you believe?" And they would say, "Why, yes, of course." And he would begin asking questions so simple and yet so fundamentally groundbreaking that his very questions would cut through the room of chatter as a collectivist gasp rang out across the hall at such insinuations. They stopped inviting the physicist who lives in his van and parked wherever he could. When I was younger, I used to worry I'd end up like that man. Homeless in a van, reading textbooks from pawn shops dumped by college students who didn't know how good they had it or even what they honestly had. When I was younger, I used to reach out and grasp every piece of information and knowledge I could. And most of the time, I had no idea what the hell I was reading, but I just felt like this party was going to end one day. One day, they were going to come and take my books away. They would delete my hard drives of all my notes, videos, and research. I was going to end up exiled, just like the homeless physicist. I'm tired of hearing the majority of opinions. I'm exhausted by the endless drivel and droning of people who can only agree with their superiors and inferiors, not because they are correct, but because they believe they have the right message. Science was never by consensus. It was never designed to be a consensus. Whenever a consensus is formed, especially within science, a free and civil society must stand up in that audience and say, "What about the other guy? What does he think on the topic?" Give me 100 scientists and run a poll on anything where 97 of the 100 agree with the same opinion. I want to hear from the 3 who disagree. I want to hear from the man or woman who has the balls to stand upon their laurels and say, "I disagree with your premise, sir." What does that person have to say? The 97 scientists all attended the same universities, fought for the same government funding, and gathered at the same functions and parties, subscribed to the same mailing lists and consumed the same data towards the same conclusion and ends. The 3 intrigue me, to which you might inquire, what if 100 scientists say the sky is blue, but 1 scientist says it is not? To damn with the 100, I say. I want to hear the opinion of the 1. For the 1 stands alone. He stands in front of the entire nation. Nay, the world, and he stands upon his principles and education and within his right. And he dares to say, "No, it's purple." Let that man speak. Let the public judge whether the sky is genuinely purple or blue. Not the damn consensus. A consensus is as rotten as any democratic principle or formation, and I damn it just as much as any opinion of any regular person who claims to know this or that, but hasn't the argument to present in any regard, or even the attempt at consideration of the opposite opinion. A science by consensus is ignorant. A science that functions by consensus ignores its roots, philosophical principles, and founders who gave a lot more than just ideas and time to the study of science, but in many cases across history, literally gave their lives to its pursuit. Those men did not stand upon a consensus and declare what the public wanted to hear in a unified voice. They declared what is, and what is possible, rooted within the philosophical principles that are science itself. Damn any scientist who claims otherwise. They are fools. The news of today will flicker on our mobile television screens and claim.
Today, 10,000 scientists formed a consensus.
And the public will accept their premise and conclusion without hesitation, as if that is how the world works. The science of consensus worries itself about the dissenters from the consensus instead of whether the consensus is the group that is worthy of consent. The science of consensus develops boards, certifications, and organizations. It sets the policy of funding and access to information amongst themselves to maintain the only thing they genuinely wish to keep, the consensus. A science of consensus elects to itself a voice, which is a singular voice, and that voice will scream down anyone who disagrees with consensus conclusions. A science of consensus will direct amongst their organization who may stay and who may go, and what they may say to anyone who wishes to ask the words of the consensus, as that consensus operates as a single unit of consensus, where any voice outside the consensus is immediately removed from the consensus. A science of consensus refuses any other opinion that doesn't reinforce that consensus. A science of consensus seeks to destroy, through public ridicule or decertification of qualifications, anyone who disagrees with its conclusions and therefore is not within the consensus. A science of consensus refuses to debate any member not within the consensus and talks down to all outside the consensus who are not paying members of that consensus. A science of consensus busies itself with consensus matters and never the issues that formed a consensus. Has there ever been such a horrific disgrace to the pursuit of science than those who align with a consensus? A science of consensus assumes to themselves the ultimate authority of what is proper. A science of consensus drafts the textbooks and educational materials to be taught to everyone behind them so that they only learn the science of consensus and never any other opinion. A science of consensus drafts for itself laws that cannot and shall not, and will not ever be questioned, as the act of challenging the laws questions the consensus, and such voices shall not ever be heard. They shall never be qualified. They shall never be accepted. I say damn all that. Damn their pretenses, postulations, and precepts. Damn their findings, figures, and fouls. Damn their explanations, exclamations, and extenuations. Damn their applications and approvals and absurdities. Damn them. Damn those physicists who cower behind six-figure academic salaries and seven-figure research budgets only to demonize, demonstrate, and demolish anyone who questions the way of the world and attempts to add to our fundamental understanding of it. Damn those historians who hide in dust-covered shelves, keeping any knowledge you aren't allowed to know to themselves, or burning it from memory itself while hanging plaques on buildings with dates that don't match the age. When has truth ever sought consensus? Truth has only ever managed to find consensus after all lies had been extinguished. Truth has only ever managed to become accepted after all liars were disproven. Truth is the only measure of measurement that has ever mattered. Truth does not need consensus. Consensus requires its body to be taken as truth. Truth will always prevail over those who seek to silence it, as long as people like you never stop asking why, before they have a chance to delete it. This is the end of the text-to-speech audio version of The Observer by Dark Philosopher. For more content, including our trends analysis, see our Substack at darkphilosopher.substack.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future articles. As always, farewell and good luck. Signed, Dark Philosopher.